Hi everybody, welcome back. I wanted to share with you some ideas about centers that can go on in your classroom. This is with Growing and Changing in the first part of that CCGPS unit with the storybook Socks. In my classroom, I need to give you a little bit of background. I ran things a little differently than a lot of people do. I ran only 4 centers in my classroom. I ran a book center that the books were Lexiled and were put out according to whatever theme we happen to be doing. I ran a foldable center, I ran a wordplay center, and I ran a game center. And a game center was so important because children needed that socialization skills still. They also needed to learn their winners and losers and how to be good sportsmen. So many things go into a game center. But you don't have to do it that way. You can incorporate whatever centers you like. But I just felt the consistency of the 4 centers. I taught those the first 3 weeks of school. The children knew what to do when they got to those centers. Only the content that went into the centers changed. Now, I had a 90-minute literacy block, and the way I did my 90-minute literacy block was I spent about 20 minutes or so on whole group instruction. I spent about another 20 minutes on center time, and during centers, my children were at centers. I rotated through. I retaught anything, if anything needed to be retaught at that moment, so that children were practicing skills incorrectly. And then I had a separate time for my guided reading or my small group differentiated instruction. That was a 40-minute block. I usually saw 2 groups of children a day for 20 minutes each. And while I was calling those children to me, the other children were working collaboratively in their groups, but they were doing what was in this blue book that I showed you in the previous video. And they differentiated it to their own needs. Some were drawing pictures, some were writing, some were doing more writing than others, because foldables lend themselves to differentiation without me having to say, this is how you're going to do it. So that's how my literacy block ran, only because that's what worked for me. And it worked for me in kindergarten, it worked for me in 1st grade, it worked for me in 3rd grade. You take and you do your literacy block with what's going to work for you in your classroom. But I just wanted to throw some center ideas out there at you to go along with socks. And during that first week that I was doing this, one of the centers I would have done would have been a writing center. And I would have had the children do a simple shutter foldable, cut it out like a jack-o'-lantern, and had them write an informational piece on how to carve a jack-o'-lantern, because informational writing is what you should be going over during the second 9 weeks. Then I would have had my books out, and I would have had the kids do a simple story map. This is one that I happen to like that's very easy to use, because there always has to be an accountability piece with their books center, so that children aren't doing what you don't want them to be doing over there. Then I would have done a foldable center, and I would have done a foldable center based on Peter. And what I would have done was taken a sentence strip. I would have had the children fold the sentence strip into thirds. And then what they're going to do is they're going to write beginning, and end. Sorry, I'm trying to hurry, guys. Like this. And then in the center, they're going to write Peter. And they're going to draw and tell me about Peter. And they're going to draw and tell me about Peter at the beginning of the story, and then they're going to tell me about how it was at the end of the story. And in here in the middle, they're going to write, why do they think that Peter changed? What caused Peter's behaviors to change? Simple, easy, foldable that has to do with how a character changes from the beginning of a story to the end of the story. And I used Peter's chair and the character Peter from there. And then my game center would have been Guess My Word, where I just used index cards, like a Pictionary type game. The children pull a card and they have to feed the word. If the word is ball, they could say round, bounces, until the other child guesses the word. And I would have used nouns, verbs, and adjectives, since that's what we were going over in this unit. Those would have been my centers for the first week. For week 2, going into centers, I would have done some figurative language with idioms, those types of things. They're straight out of the unit. With the kids and doing some writing, they love idioms. They love to illustrate idioms. They like to do the literal and the non-literal versions of them. That would have been in my writing center. I would have had my books out again as always with maybe this time a different graphic organizer to use. And then my foldable would have been synonyms and antonyms. This is a simple one that's got the word. You could have used vocabulary words or any other words that you so choose. And then they had to find synonyms and antonyms using a thesaurus or a dictionary. One of the things I suggest is that at the bottom of each page, the children number so that they don't get confused that cold, frigid, and hot all go together. And then at the bottom of number 2, or the second word, they put a 2, because you don't want them thinking that pretty and frigid are synonyms or antonyms. They need to make sure that there's consistency across it. Easy foldable. You can put as many pages together as you like. It's just a hot dog bowl that's got cuts. I did not cut the last page. That's what holds it together. And a line will do you just fine of glue. The other center is a multi-meaning word center game, and it came from the fcrr.org website. You just go onto there and you type in multi-meaning words and it'll pull it up, and it's just it's a memory match game that would have gone in my game center. That would have been for week 2. Finally, week 3 of centers with socks. I would have done an opinion piece of writing again. If you wanted to do your writing center, my book center would have been out with another graphic organizer. And then my foldable this time is multi-meaning words. So this is again a hot dog fold on the outside. And on the inside, I took the word mark. It's straight out of the CCGPS unit. I've written it 3 times. And then underneath here, I would have them do me an illustration of one type of mark, the second type of mark, and then the third type of mark. And then I would have them give me a sentence with mark in it. And then I did it for cut, which was another one of the words that it chose. And I would do the same thing. And you can give them as many multi-meaning words as you'd like, enough to make sure that you keep them busy for that center time. If you're only doing 20-minute centers, probably 2 words with 3 meanings apiece will be plenty. And then finally, my game for that is context clues, hot dots. If you have it, I love it. I will say if you use hot dots, please make sure there's an accountability piece. What I did was I made my children write me the card number, the title of the card or the story that they were reading, and then one fact that wasn't on the back of the card in the questions and the answers. That way it held them accountable to make sure that they were actually doing the reading of the passages. Hope this helps, guys. I'm just trying to put it out there for you. Again, you can reach me on my through my email if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to try to get back with you and answer them. Thanks. See you next time.